But what I'm going to talk about real quick is what at-risk vessels are and the enforcement behind that. So an at-risk vessel is a vessel that has conditions that show an officer that that vessel could be heading towards being derelict. We want to try to prevent derelicts from occurring. Derelict vessels are extremely expensive to remove. And we want, if we can get in front of it, that's what the object of this law is. This started off as a community policing effort back in 2010. It worked very effectively. The legislature took it up and created a law, 327.4107. And this law now makes it a non-criminal infraction if 6 conditions exist on this vessel, any one of the 6 conditions. So the vessel's taking on water or is taken on water without a means to dewater itself. So it's got a dead battery, the bilge pump no longer works, something like that. That is a violation. Spaces on the vessel that are designed to be enclosed are incapable of being closed or sealed off for extended periods of time. So if they have a hatch cover and they're not using that hatch cover to close the salon part of the vessel and rain's going in there and everything like that, that's a violation. The vessel is broken loose or in danger of breaking loose from its anchor. That's very easily provable. The vessel is listing due to water intrusion. The vessel does not have an effective means of propulsion for safe navigation within 72 hours of noticing the owner to take an evaluation to determine whether their vessel does or does not have an effective means of propulsion. If they take that evaluation and fail it, or if they don't take the test, they can be issued this citation. It is a non-criminal infraction. And I'll talk about that test in a second. And then the last one is the vessel is tied to an unpermitted or unlawful structure or mooring. And we talked about that, and I think Byron talked about that. This is a lot of times people will take an engine block and they'll throw it over the side and it goes to the bottom with a piece of chain and a rope attached to a buoy that's on the surface, and they use that as their personal mooring. And these moorings are illegal. They're not allowed. In order to have that engine block on the bottom, you would have to have a permit from DEP. That's their sovereign submerged land. And even if it's private submerged land, the owner of that property has to have issued permission to do that. The ball floating on the surface has to have an FWC permit because it's an obstruction in the waterway, and we permit those. So those are considered illegal moorings. I've seen in Panama City, I've seen shopping carts filled with concrete and then that's dropped to the bottom. I've seen cars, refrigerators, all sorts of stuff being used as illegal moorings. So being attached to that is against the law. It's a non-criminal violation, and it can also be other violations, but that is an at-risk violation. All an officer has to do is have reasonable suspicion that a vessel doesn't have an effective means of propulsion for safe navigation. And if they can articulate that in their narrative, then they can move forward and request the owner of that vessel take an evaluation to determine if their vessel does or does not have an effective means of propulsion for safe navigation. Once that person's been notified, and they have to be notified electronically or in person with body-worn camera in play, then they have to provide the evaluation to the officer. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because I know we are pressed on time, but vessels 16 feet or less are exempt. If they have proof that they've ordered the proper parts for repairing that, or they've got an appointment with a marina to get their vessel fixed, then we have to give them 30 more days before we move forward with that citation. And the evaluations that we do, we can't give them during small craft advisories. And also if it's a sailboat test only, we have to give them a minimum of 5 knots of wind to do the test in. Under 5 knots, we'll cancel the test. There's 30 days between citations for escalating the fines, and the owners can have somebody take the test for them if they're not capable of or don't know how to sail a boat or something like that. They own it, but they don't know how to sail it. And that's actually quite frequent. But they can have somebody else perform the evaluation in their absence. And if a ticket was issued or a citation was issued, it would be issued to the owner, not the person performing the evaluation. And one of the reasons the legislature did this was failure to show that you have an effective means of propulsion for safe navigation on that vessel and you have lived on that vessel for at least 1 day, that's all that's needed. That vessel becomes a live aboard vessel. And at that point, not only do all of the state boating laws apply to that vessel, but also any local ordinances regulating live aboard vessels. That's the area that's not preempted. So by this, it's easy to make a vessel a live aboard vessel. And that's a very difficult thing to prove. So the evaluation that we use for sailboats, and I'll just race through this, and I again apologize, I can be much more in detail on a personal basis, but basically we have somebody that has a sailboat only, it only has a sail, or they have a multi-purpose propulsion, they've got the sail and an auxiliary motor, and in those cases we ask the person, what do you want to be today? Do you want to be a sailboat or a motorboat? And they pick which one they want. If they're a sailboat only, they pull up to the anchor, they've got all the rigging up, they detach from the anchor, and the officer says go. They take off, they go 100 yards in a direction of their choosing. They come about using the equipped steerage on the vessel and wind power only and return to the starting point. And they've got 15 minutes to complete that test. That's just a little more than a slow walk. If they don't make it in 15 minutes or they fail to take the test, then they will receive a citation for at-risk failure to have the propulsion necessary. So it looks something like that. And we let them pick the path that they want to travel, and we verify the distance, and that makes it safer that we're not putting them onto a reef or something like that. So now the all other vessel is if a vessel has powered propulsion or it's human powered. These people have to take their vessel, pull up to the starting point, and when the officer says go, they're going to travel a quarter of a mile in the direction of the officer's choosing, and they're going to come about adjacent to or around a test buoy, and they're going to return to the starting point, and they've got 10 minutes to complete that. And I've seen a 40-foot Chris craft with I think it had a 50 horsepower Evinrude on the back complete this in 8.5 minutes. So it's very doable. And then there's always that person that says, well, I'm not motor powered or sail powered, I'm human powered. What are you going to do about that? And we say, well, you're going to take the exact same test as the motorboat test. You just have 15 minutes to do that instead of 10. So if they've got a 36-foot Irwin and a paddle and they're human powered craft, then they have to go a quarter of a mile with their paddle, come about and return to the starting point. And they've got 15 minutes. Looks something like this. And again, it's the direction of travel is set by the officer. And we also have test kits that are throughout the state now with 2 A5 buoys, anchors, all that stuff. And the officers can set up a evaluation course in safe water where this person can go out and take their test. And again, if they're in a congregated area, which is some sort of impromptu anchorage or within a mooring field, they can take them outside of that area, of course, and not have them weaving through boats trying to conduct the test. So this section does not apply to vessels that are attached to a dock with the consent of the owner of the property for the purpose of making repairs. So we're not just going up and down canals and trying to cite everybody that's tied to a dock. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is trying to prevent a derelict vessel from occurring. If we can get ahead of that, it's going to save the taxpayers money and it's going to protect our waterways. Again, if a person receives a non-criminal citation for an at-risk feature, A through F, and they get a second citation for the same violation, so it has to be the same violation within those 6, then their fine goes up to from 100 on the first citation to 250 the second citation. Then it's 500 for the third citation and 500 thereafter. If they've received 3 citations within an 18-month period for the same violation of 327-4107, and the disposition for all 3 of those citations is anything other than acquittal or dismissal, then they become a public nuisance vessel. And if that becomes a public nuisance vessel, it can be removed from the waters of the state and destroyed and disposed of just as if it were a derelict vessel. But it doesn't actually become a derelict vessel. It's a at-risk vessel that's being treated like a derelict vessel. I'm sorry, I've got the screen right in front of me. I don't know why I'm breaking my neck there. So just so you understand, you never want to say a public nuisance vessel is a derelict vessel. It is not. They're two separate animals. We just treat the public nuisance vessel as if it were derelict. And of course, if the person came out and fixed whatever was wrong with their vessel, it would no longer be a public nuisance vessel and the whole thing would go away for them. And that's our intent, is to try to get these people to bring their vessels into compliance in the first place. So sometimes it's an awful lot of work to get there, but they finally come around, and a lot of them do the right thing and get their vessels in compliance, and we've prevented a derelict vessel. And so that's what I've got. And then we can talk more about the VTIP program when we get started on that.
Go ahead. You got 10 minutes to do the VTIP.
10 minutes to do the VTIP program. All right, Pebbles, come on up.